What is up, everyone? Welcome to Market Psychology 101, where we look for value in the markets when there's fear and are cautious when there's greed. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at Bitcoin as well as other macro charts and indicators. And let's start off with fear and greed. Bitcoin still in decent greed territory. So even with some of the recent pullbacks and I think, this should be expected. A lot of people seem to be surprised or overreacting every time there's a pullback. Anytime we get a big move up, you got to expect somewhat of a correction. So the fact we're still high in greed, I think, is a good thing. But as we zoom out, what I tend to look for are trends. Do we have any micro trends, macro trends? Right now, the macro trend is still a series of higher lows. Same with those pullbacks. And you can see how Bitcoin hovers right on the edge of this 75 number. And 75 and higher is extreme greed. So when Bitcoin is really pushing into new all-time highs, that's when we see extreme greed. And I think the fear and greed chart shows us that. Taking a look at some almanac perspective for Bitcoin, you can see here that we have the Bitcoin monthly return chart. And so far, this year has been positive. And in years where we've had a cycle top, let me show you this on this chart here. So early 2018, late 2017, alt season was here in April 21. When we go to this chart, we can see that the year leading up to those alt seasons, that the summer tends to not be so bad. Here we had the summer of 2020, summer of 2017. Of course, September just seems to suck regardless. So keep that in mind. But so far, I think this is kind of fallen in line with what we've seen before. Now, the last couple of years, summer has not been so great. And so I do think this time is different and it lines up with what we see in the last year of these Bitcoin cycle tops. And if you're like me, and you're not totally Bitcoin maxi, which is it's okay if you are. I have friends who are mostly in Bitcoin, and I would say they're probably smarter than me long term. But if you're waiting for alt season and to multiply your money even more, which is what I'm looking to do, you're keeping this chart in mind. I do recommend screenshotting it. And I do wonder if we've entered this phase two where Ethereum is starting to outperform Bitcoin. So we'll take a look at metrics to see if that's still holding up. But as we get deeper into alt season, once Bitcoin tops and it's too expensive to keep buying, that's when we see that rotation where large caps, things like Chainlink, Cardano, etc., explode. And if you pick the right low cap or medium cap coin like Jasmine or something or an Ondo, Arrow, who knows, that they can really run. So I haven't looked at this chart with you guys in a while, but I think the point still stands that on the way to the top, there are big corrections. Imagine if you got out at this 31% correction before alt season was right here, or this 40% or this 40% correction, or look at these corrections. Imagine if you got out at this 30 or 20% correction before there was that alt season rotation right in here. So just keep that in mind that these corrections are normal and that you want to wait and see, is Bitcoin topping? Is it hitting those metrics to show Bitcoin's topping? And shout out to blockchaincenter.net, not sponsoring or anything, but they have this new metric I just noticed today. Or maybe it was hiding on another page where they're showing some of the data days since the last altcoin Bitcoin year. And you can see how long it's been since altcoin year. It's actually the longest streak, though I will say, as we zoom out, and right now, altcoin year, it's just consolidating or accumulating, if you will. We have the data for 21, but it doesn't go back here in 2017 or prior to that. And really, altcoins didn't start becoming a thing until the 2017 cycle. So, take that for what it's will. Though, as someone who was here in 2017 and was getting altcoins during that summer, and fall before they really exploded. Some did well and were doing a 2x or 5x and it's great, but also when they're exploding 10x, 20x, 100x, that was a crazy time. So I would wonder, how would the data look different if we had some of that before, though. I don't know if it would be really valid. But anyways, cool data. I'm glad they have that here. But keep in mind, we have not seen this rip up yet. And once it does, once it starts getting above, I'll say that high right here, getting around 60 or higher, then it's go time. So it can happen really quick. 2017 happened fast. Let's take a look at the Bitcoin rainbow chart. Right now, we are still in this yellow band. It looks like it's getting to the lower end of the yellow band. If you take a look at mid-August, the lower end of that yellow band is around 104K. So at worst, can we see 104K sometime within this month or even September? Maybe. If September is really bad, I'd be taking a look at that high green area around 104K, maybe 100K. Remember, 102K was the top, and that's that macro fib. So I do expect that macro 1618 fib to hold up no matter what. I talk about stocks, other crypto assets on this channel. Subscribe to hear more about that. So right now, Bitcoin, we're taking a look at the weekly, and we can see that we do have a red Heikin-Ashi. I like Heikin-Ashis because they show trends. No sell signal yet, though it has been negative. And if we take off our buy-sell signals, I think it's important to check that once in a while. You can see, probably show better on the daily. Been talking about this inverse head and shoulders, and we had to move up to this 1618 fib here at around 120K. You guys can see I drew high to low this macro fib. We never got any candle body closes above that, but we came down, and right now we're testing that support of around that inverse head and shoulders trend line, as you can see there. Shoulder, head, shoulder. We're testing that trend line, and we tested the 50-day moving average. So right now we're between that head and shoulder trend line, the 50-day, of course, and the 20-day moving average. So that's around 116. If we could see Bitcoin get above 116 again, I think that'll be good. If we get a little bit rejected and we start kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Squeezing. That's a good word. If we start squeezing in between the 20, the 50, the trend line, I think a big move can happen up or down, and just to be ready for that. And if it's down, I'd be watching that 100-day moving average at around 108K. If it's up, of course, I think we have to look at 120K. If we break that fib, then we are looking at 134K over here at the micro fib. Now let's take off our moving average for a second. That's our current TA. I was telling you guys about the 1618, and I have not stretched this fib out in a while. Let's try to match that bottom on the left as much as possible. It's not perfect, but that's okay. You guys can see here that 1618, when we're drawn from the last cycle, high to low, our charts on log, our fib is off log. That 1618 at 102K, that is a strong area. And you can see here, last time we had those bottoms, it was support. So again, remember what the rainbow chart shows. I think anytime the data lines up across different charts, then it starts to build a stronger case. I don't just take one data point and take it to heart and base my strategy off that. But the rainbow chart, our fibs are all showing that even in September, if things get really bad, I expect that 1618 to hold. If it doesn't hold, then I would be concerned. There is an indicator, by the way. I think it's super trend. If we take a look here on the daily, it shows 110K to hold that super trend. The weekly is what I watch to see where is the weekly super trend. If we ever got down to 88K, I do not think we're getting there, by the way. If we ever got down below the super trend, then things are bad. So that's really the one to watch for. One of the other cases we've been making for the last month or so, we've been combining the log regression. This is our rainbow chart, as well as the pi cycle high and low. And when we zoom way out, there's a lot going on here, but you can see that the tops of Bitcoin, that's what I want you to pay attention to, are inside the log regression. Now, the pi cycle, people have asked me, do I think the pi cycle is going to flash this time? I do not, because that means this lower moving average would have to get above the high moving average. I don't see that happening. It happened in 2017. It barely happened last cycle in 21. But what I want you to notice is Bitcoin runs into that upper moving average. I ran into it recently in March 24, well, kind of recent. Right now, that pi cycle moving average is within the log regression. So I think the scenario that makes sense for all these indicators, even our fibs, is that we could see a top within this fib, the 2618, the 3618. And the fibs also show regression as well. In the last cycle, the fib, it topped out here between the 3618 and the 4236. I'll show you that right here. If we show our fib high to low, take a look at the fib extension, you'll see that top was right here around the 3618 to 4236. Bitcoin topped first around 65K and then 69K. All right. Every cycle, Bitcoin top hits a lower fib. So if it topped within this fib range, I'm expecting this at best, okay, between 155 and 200K. Now, that also lines up with this log regression, and it also lines up with our upper pi cycle. Now, the one thing that would be different, if people believe the pi cycle would break, that means our log regression and fib trends overall would break. And I tend to think that, overall, and the rainbow chart shows this, that we are still within this trend, this macro trend. And not just that, but we are making lower highs within that rainbow chart each time. Now, the rainbow chart, I do not think is perfect. Let me get a sip of coffee here. So good. Morning coffee. Gotta love it. These tops are getting lower. Now, the rainbow trend isn't perfect. The bottoms got invalidated last time. But I will say, you do see a pattern here. You see how these tops get lower and it flattens out each time. This is what logarithmic regression trends do. If you remember taking a look at the COVID statistics back in 2020, this is what those stats showed as well. So I'm still eyeing somewhere in these orange bands. And those orange bands, even if we keep with the trend of the tops, is you guys can see the orange bands are between 150 and the low 200K. And that lines up with all this right here. I know this is a mess, but our fibs, our upper pi cycle, our log regression, it all lines up, and that is what I'm expecting at best. Now, we've been talking about altcoins and alt season as well, and let's turn on our moving average again. We want the 50-week moving average to break. Now, there is good amount of weakness here. Are we going to see this rocket up, make new highs? Possible. After we broke this 64%, I was eyeing this 71% as a possible top, because you can see the one commonality between the last two cycles is once we saw Bitcoin dominance get to that 71%, then it was alt season. Okay. Now, that might just be a coincidence between the last two times. This cycle, I was expecting a lower high overall, so I am fine with this being the high. But if we do break above that, I'm eyeing that 71%. If we break below this 50-week moving average, remember the 50-week moving average is one of the dividing lines between bullishness and bearishness. And right now, we're still above it. And, if we take a look at, let's take a look at our MACD. MACD is pretty negative. Let's take a look at the monthly. Now, this is what gives me hope, is if the monthly all of a sudden, this is getting weaker over time. And if the monthly starts to tank, then maybe it's go time for alt season. You have to be ready for this. The RSIs kind of show a similar story. I want to say the stochastic. The stochastic is curling down. But keep in mind, last couple cycles, the stochastic double bottom, and it wasn't until the second bottom that we had alt season when the Bitcoin dominance tanked. Now it bottomed before, so it's showing bearish divergence before the price got there. This last cycle in 21, it lined up more so where we had that double bottom. You can see the stochastic bottom here, but the second bottom lined up pretty well with that. So we have not had a double bottom or even a bottoming yet. I am curious to see where Bitcoin dominance would go if the stochastic is truly doing the first and only bottom or the first of a double bottom. So something to keep in mind. All right, let's get to our Ethereum Bitcoin pairing, because I want to go back to something I talked about earlier in the video, and that is, where's the chart? Here it is. Are we in phase two? All right, let's answer that question right here. We still don't know. Now, right now, Ethereum is moving better than Bitcoin. That's why that value is going up. Ethereum Bitcoin recently was, at 0.1 to 0.5. Right now, it's stuck at that 0.19, 0.2. Now, you can see it is run into the macro 382. I'll show you how I got there. I drew this fib from high to low, okay? And our fib shows the 382 is right here at 0.2. We also have the 50-week moving average. Remember what I said about the 50-week moving average being the difference between being bearish and bullish. So we need to break above that to be bullish. And also the 382, that is another one of those dividing lines for any chart asset. If you are under a macro 382, you are still technically bearish, can still make new lows. Now, we'll see what happens here, but right now, we could hesitantly say, maybe we have started phase two, and heck, maybe we come down here to 0.15 and we're still making a series of higher lows, higher highs. That might happen. We might get another flush. I think, that might line up with that September dip that we always see. That would not surprise me. So, maybe we come down here into September and then really rock it up, get that Q4 alt season. And remember, these alt seasons have been in the last part of the post-halving year. So December of 2013, December of 2017. The true top for last cycle, if you want to call it that, November of 21. Now, alt season was here. And technically, I say this once in a while, between the halvings, wouldn't March be the true top because that got even higher? So something to consider. But either way, a lot of people consider that to be the true top. Are we going towards another 4-year cycle that happens in Q4 this year? If so, I could see it coming down and then really rocketing up. And if we see ETH, Bitcoin get to 0.3, 0.4, then things are looking good. Overall, let's just fly through these total three. Getting a little bit of pullback, it come back down to the 50-week, as well as that 786 at around 850 billion. So altcoins are not like that, but buy the dip. That's what I'm going to be doing. And others, Bitcoin still looking bearish, but this one, if there was very bearish December of 2020, this thing rocketed up, and this was alt season right in April, right in here. So I am not selling as we get down here because I've seen this twice before. Will it happen a third time? I hope so. No guarantees though. If I don't make money, or if you don't make money, I'm not making money. So we're all in this together. As far as tether dominance, is this showing us something? Let's put on our buy signal. We don't have a buy signal yet. But if this does, I'd be watching this area, this 236 in these moving averages, the 200, the 100. I'd be watching for this 5.1% tether dominance if we are to have a positive move up. Last time you could see the candle buys got rejected off the 50-week moving average, so maybe 4.86. But I'm still expecting tether dominance to get as low as 3.5%. Quick look at Ethereum. Man, that 888 is just being annoying. So let's line it all up well or perfectly. Let's make sure our fib, that's the 786. Yeah, I know what's going on. Like, why is this looking weird? That 888, we just can't get a break. So maybe it's coming back down, to this trend line. We might see 3K high 2,700 ETH. If so, if you like ETH, I'd be looking to get some there. Anyways, that is my macro analysis of Bitcoin. Let me know whether you agree or disagree. But I think, a lot of things still line up, still hopeful of alt season. We might have some pain coming in September. That might be the last buy the dip scenario before we rock it up. That seems to be what we're going towards. So anyways, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you all have a fantastic week. Take care.